Hey guys, welcome back. Taft Hardington here for the 19 Priest Itemization Guide. This video in particular is going to go pretty in depth to itemizing as a priest at 19. I'm going to have a link to my quick and dirty 5-minute itemization video if you're just looking for bare bones. But if you're looking to get more into the meat of itemizing a priest, this is the video for that. Um, the first thing I want to kind of lay out for 19 priest is basically your priority in what you're doing in Warsong Gulch, and that's going to be dispelling. I would argue that dispel is the most powerful spell in Warsong Gulch, regardless of bracket. And especially true in the 19 bracket. Um, so dispelling is like your primary concern, and because of this, you need to go a lot heavier into mana than what you're probably thinking. Because if you're thinking about making a 19 priest, you're trying to figure out, well, how do I balance out all different stats? Going more into int is a lot more important than you might originally think. Healing is sort of just a secondary uh, role for priest. The biggest thing is going to be dispels, but healing would be secondary, and then doing sort of utility stuff like fearing and rank 1 shadow word painting is like tertiary, and then doing damage is sort of on the peripheral of what a priest is going to be doing. The biggest thing is offensive and defensive dispelling. So, and with that, when we think about how it is we're going to itemize, what would be like the ideal itemization is basically the more comfortable you get and the more practice you get with priest, the more you'll find that you're mana starved. And I would suggest, like, if you're starting out with the priest, um, then you would want to go kind of a little bit more beefy. And then as you get more comfortable and more advanced with it, you'll find that the health isn't really all that important. At first, it'll seem very important, but the more you play 19 Priest, the more you realize that you really only need to be around 800 health. Of course, like at that point where you're at 800 health and like over 2k mana, you need to be well defined in your play style, and what you do becomes a lot more delicate. Um, so that's just I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. Also, I wanted to mention that there is no one sort of best in slot set. You can have like a best in slot general purpose set, but um, really the best in slot set is having a full toolbox of gear that you can change for whatever the situation is that you're in. That's really what I would consider to be a best in slot set, is just having the full toolbox of all the gear available, so that you can mix match depending on what it is that you're doing. Um, One of the things also that I wanted to talk about before we actually get into the nit and gritty of the gear is sort of, I guess, where I'm at in sort of thought theory with 19 Priest, and it's something that I haven't tested yet, but I think it's kind of like where it's going to be going. Um, so as I had said, that like the more and more you play it, the more delicate it gets as you sacrifice health for more mana, um, with your gear, which will allow you to sort of fulfill the primary purpose of dispelling and healing Like having more health isn't going to help you heal more or dispel more. Um, it's not really going to help you do any of the things that priests do. All having more health is going to do is basically give you more of a more blubber, if you will, for making mistakes. If you played flawlessly, you could technically play with 1 health, right? Or, well, maybe not 1 health, but you get the idea. You could play with like 100 health, and if you played flawlessly, that wouldn't ever really be an issue. You would just need enough to sort of withstand maybe. Well, yeah, in full theory, you would only really need like just 100 health. If you played perfectly, you would never take damage, if that makes sense. And if we follow that theory, it leads us to where you see in here where we've got, if it wants to load for me. Oh, it doesn't want to load for me, but you see we got the shadow gear. And it kind of goes with more shadow gear. Okay, it's freezing up on me or something. Hello. Let's get the view going. Um, so I guess we'll get into this a little bit later, but like the spell damage Nax enchant with the ghostly mantle, or for Alliance the reinforced woolen shoulders, the shadow damage cape, the shadow damage chest piece, shadow damage bracers, null casting gloves with shadow damage enchant. Um, there isn't any shadow damage legs. Um, shadow damage boots. These sort of things line up with, if you take this theory of like sacrificing more and more health for more mana, you can kind of extend that theory to say, well, when you have all of that down pat, you could then sort of add on the peripheral, which would be doing damage and playing a lot more aggressively as a priest. So if you could imagine, like, you're playing on such a level that you're able to go and do a lot more damage than is sort of orthodox for a 19 priest. You think of a 19 priest as being just in the back, sort of healing, getting a dispel out, every now and then. But if we kind of extend it, to full fruition, you could imagine a priest who plays in such a way that is aggressively pursuing on offense, sort of like playing a shadow assist, where it's pretty much entirely doing shadow damage and dispelling, and really not doing too much healing. Um, but of course, having the ability to heal like when it's needed. Um, but yeah, and so we haven't actually tested this yet, but if we take that thought to like its full fruition, that's kind of like where we've ended up at this point, um, in our thinking. Um, and we're definitely going to test it out and see if it's really viable. Because right now that's just theory, and I just kind of wanted to go over that because there are items in here like the shadow damage, and you might be wondering like, oh, like a shadow damage priest, but not quite what you would think of whenever you think of like a level 60 shadow priest. It's a much more of an assist type of role, and it goes along with that theory. So I just wanted to explain that and get that out of the way, to avoid confusion. And I guess the next thing we can talk about is going to be these neck shoulder enchants, because they're kind of out of the way. The one that most people are going to go for is going to be the Fortitude of the Scourge, and this is the tank shoulder enchant, the 16 stamina, 100 armor, And this is the one that's going to go on sale first. Because there's really not going to be much like by the time this goes on sale, 60 PvP is pretty much going to be dead. You're really only going to have the people who are like fully just committed to and I think like most of the people are going to be so busy. They're raiding Nax, they're raiding AQ, doing the ZG, the AQ20 resets, the BWL, the MC resets. Like it gets really hectic at this point. And some guilds just say, forget the rest. We're just doing Nax only. So PvP at 60 when this comes about is really just sort of an afterthought. So most people aren't trying to get this shoulder enchant for PvP purposes. And even the tanks aren't necessarily going for this shoulder enchant either. Most of the tanks are going to want the attack power and melee crit shoulder enchant for threat. So this just kind of goes up, and you'll see guilds selling it, and it's not too hard to buy this one. So a lot of 19s are going to end up getting this early, because say even the tanks, say well, you bring in 4 tanks and then two furies who can throw on tank gear when needed. So it'd really only be 4 or maybe 6 max out of the 40 people there who are actually ever going to even use this enchant for PvE purposes. Whereas you compare that to something like the Resilience of the Scourge. This is 31 healing, 5 MP5. You're going to have to go through 10 people. So, so it'd be like 4 for the Fortitude, and then you got like 9 to 10 for the Resilience of the Scourge that this is going to have to go through before any guild is going to like give it out, to a 19. And it gets even, thinner whenever it comes to something like Power of the Scourge, which is the 15 damage to magical spells in effect, and 1% crit on spell. So that you're going to have to go through all the warlocks, and you're going to have to go through all the mages before this ever goes out. And this is, the melee DPS have their equivalent of this, and you also have to tack on the hunters with the attack power shoulder enchant. Well, let's pull that up. Who would that be on the rogue? Might of the Scourge. So you're going to end up having to go through all the hunters, all the rogues, all the fury warriors, ferals, and the threat tanks as well are also going to want this. So those two, the Might of the Scourge, Power of the Scourge, are going to take quite a while before it can ever get onto a 19. Resilience of the Scourge, a little bit more likely, because you're only ever going to have like 10 or so people pick this up. But the Fortitude, the one I think most 19s are going to even be going after, this one's going to open up a lot sooner, and it'll be a heck of a lot cheaper. So I just kind of wanted to explain it. These drop-offs of Huron out of Nax, that's the boss right before KT, the Big Froster's this boss. So yeah, just kind of wanted to get those out of the way. So yeah, let's talk about the itemization. We'll start with head and work our way down. So I'm just going to list these off. We got Lucky Fishing Hat. Every 19 guide in the world has this. You get this you fish it up at the STV arena. Does not take up any XP to get this other than the exploration XP from the STV coast. 15 stamina, super stylish. This comes out with the ZG patch. And this is going to be the mainstay. This is going to be the best helm you can get, just because 15 stamina is so ridiculously big. And it's also super stylish. And next we have the green tinted goggles, which you get with 150 engineering. Everyone's going to have these. Everyone needs to go 150 engineering. This is 8 stam, 7 spirit, kind of corny looking. We've also have the shadow goggles. This is also from engineering. 5 intellect, 6 spirit. Also kind of corny looking. But I mean, some people consider these to look classic, so I mean, I don't want to ruin it for you. But to me, I feel like it's kind of corny looking, but it's not. It's just opinion. And then for the horde, there's this hooded cowl. No stats, but just a little extra style if you want it. This comes at level 19. The quest Dangerous from this is in Hillsbrad off of the wanted poster at the inn in Hillsbrad. Um, and it does have armor, so you are able to Libram it. And basically, you're gonna start out with green tinted goggles and shadow goggles, and you could also start with hooded cowl. But Lucky Fishing Hat doesn't come out until the ZG phase. And for the Librams, there's really only 3 different types of Librams you get. You get either Libram of Constitution, or Lesser Arcanium, is 100 HP. You get the Arcanium of Rumination, is 150 mana. And then there is the Arcanium of Focus, which is +8 to healing and damaging spells. So basically, we have these lined up here where you can see from our first video, we said we assume it's better to stat stack as opposed to stat smooth. So this is why you see the Constitution with the fishing hat. And none of these have uniqueness other than the hooded cowl, because that comes from a quest. So you can have as many pairs of shadow goggles, as many pair of lucky fishing hat and green tinted as you want, and you can mix match all the different Librams and to whatever your heart's desire. I would personally suggest that for the helm slot, you go with the Arcanium of Rumination, the 150 mana. And I would say whenever you first start, that you have one Libram 150 mana on the helm, and then the second Libram 100 HP. It doesn't really matter which way they go, but I always felt like it was better for a priest to have one 150, one 100 HP. But whatever your playstyle is, you can make it work however you want. I wouldn't really advise getting into the Arcanium of Focus unless you wanted to do sort of a kind of like the shadow assist spec, or the play style that we were talking about. And even then, I don't necessarily know if I would really recommend focus, but it is an option if you wanted to do that. Neck piece, you basically start out with these 2: tarnished silver necklace and voice amplification modulator. Voice amplification modulator is if you want to flaunt money, you would get it. It's I believe it's 7%, yeah, to resist silence effects. There aren't any silence effects at 19. So it's just kind of like a pretty looking item. I mean, both of these are just really cosmetic. Tarnished silver necklace, it'll stack to 20, and on my rogue right now, I'm wearing 19 of these just because, you know, it's really, these two are just cosmetic, and the only other option is going to be the honored, I believe it's honored neck piece, the Warsong rep reward, Scout's medallion, which is 6 agility, 2 stamina. It's the only option for neck. There's sentinels for alliance. Neck is just kind of pretty straightforward. Nothing to it. You either start out with tarnished silver, which drops off of those graves in Zul'Farrak, the grave room. But yeah, not much to neck. On to shoulders. I already sort of explained these, so everybody was going to start out with the Talbar mantle. Is really big. This is 6 intellect, 3 stamina. This drops off of, or it's from a quest that starts with the glowing shard, which drops off of the Murloc boss at the end of Wailing Caverns after you do the escort and in the nightmare for the those druids stuck in there. pretty big. Ghostly Mantle for Horde, 5 int, 5 spirit. This is if you wanted to go, a little bit more, basically really just picking up spirit. You're sacrificing an int and 3 stamina for 5 spirit. Doesn't really make much sense to do this unless you had a second Nax shoulder enchant. Otherwise, it really doesn't make sense. You really wouldn't be using Ghostly Mantle unless you wanted to throw on a spirit set. But I would suggest getting this just to get it. There's Deathstalkers and Shadowfang. Horde picked this up out of the Sepulcher in the crypt at the Sepulcher, and you turn it in whenever you enter SFK. You know, the guy who's like lying dead on the floor on the other side of the courtyard. That's where you turn it in. It's a very simple quest. I believe it's level 18. This says 18. I'm pretty certain it's at level 18. You do it whenever you do the Seal of Sylvanas quest, or Arugel Must Die. And then for Alliance, in line with the same theory, would be the Reinforced Woolen Shoulders. Now these, as far as the DB, the classic database is concerned, is the highest armor value shoulders, and this is why it's chosen. They also look decent. Like all the other cloth shoulders at this level look just sort of stupid. But if you find shoulders that you like more than these aesthetically, then just go with them. Like the 1 or 2 armor difference isn't gonna get you killed really. So, if you find some other shoulders that are more aesthetically pleasing for your second Nax enchant, you go ahead and do that. Another option, if you do get one of these shoulder enchants, is just putting it on a white item anyhow, assuming it doesn't create a bind, which who knows what Blizzard's gonna do. They've already made it so many clueless changes to the game. They might end up making these bind. So, but basically you would use like white shoulders and put them on that so that you can trade them to your friends, and different characters can wear them just for trading purposes. Onto the cloaks. Everybody starts out with the Engineer's Cloak. 5 stamina, 2 intellect. Great piece. Very easy to get. It starts in Ratchet. The quest is called Ziz Physics, and I believe that's at level 17? Oh, 16 maybe. 16 or 17, just go whenever you're level 16 to Ratchet, see if you can pick up Ziz Physics. And it's the goblin guy right next to the flight path, like right on the other side of the little Anna or whatever it is where the flight path, where the flight master is, like on just behind him is the quest giver, gives Ziz Physics, and it's like a 3 or 4 part chain, and you end up with this great starter cloak. And we also list here the max healing cloak, which is plus 11 healing, and then the max shadow damage cloak. Now, if you wanted to go with a plus healing item, that's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly reasonable to flirt around with a little plus healing gear. But I wouldn't, always go get this cloak, the Engineer's Cloak, and then you can end up picking these up off the auction house whenever you happen to see them at a price you're willing to pay. And then eventually you graduate up after you get, I believe these are honored. No, I want to say this is revered. Warsong. With Warsong reputation. Battle Hero's Cloak, 4 stamina, 2 spirit, 9 healing. Sort of like the best of both worlds, although there is no intellect on them. But these are what you're gonna want to be wearing. Just because the all-around stats, you're getting the 4 stam and 9 healing on it, is kind of overpowers the little 2 intellect that you pick up on the Engineer's Cloak. So let's talk about enchants for Cloak. Now, greater resistance, this is plus 5 all resistance for all the resistances, all the schools of resistance to your cloak. This is really the only, let's take a look at it. It's not expensive, by the way. This enchant is really the only PvP oriented cloak enchant. Um, at least for priest. Uh, and the reason you would get this should seem fairly obvious. This is the only place where you can really pick up resistance without having to like sacrifice, too much, because there really isn't any other option for cloak enchant. So whenever you do start out, like right now, Battle Healers isn't out. I don't know when they plan on rolling out Warsong Gulch reward gear. But for now, you would want +5 resistance to the Engineer's Cloak. And then eventually, whenever you do get Battle Healer's Cloak, you'd put +5 resistance on that, and then enchant over your Engineer's Cloak with the 70 armor superior defense. And this is in line with the fact that where'd it go? Engineer's Cloak. At that point, when you're using this would be sort of like your general purpose cloak. And then this would be for more, if you wanted to go like more stam, um, more defensive type of cloak. And you might as well make it even more defensive with 70 armor. That's a heck of a lot of armor. It's only 20 on the cloak, and put that with that, you're almost at 100 armor on the cloak. Now, you could just stay with +5 on the engineers if you wanted, but we list it there because, again, the stat stacking for purpose of consistency um, is much more in line. But for like the healing or the shadow damage, you would want to go greater resistance. We also show the lesser shadow resist, the 10 shadow damage, or sorry, the 10 shadow resistance to cloak. It is an option um, that is decent, not to be overlooked, because there are definitely situations where you're gonna run into a pesky warlock, especially as alliance, where there's a horde warlock and he's just fearing you all over the place, doing damage with that agony, because you just dispel the corruption. But there are definitely situations. Imagine the opposing faction has two priests who have decided to be wand priest, you know, and they're just going around and destroying. It would be a time to throw on a 10 shadow resistance cloak, because you can actually get quite a bit. I'm going to X out of all this. Quite a bit of shadow resistance as a 19 priest, especially as undead. Um, so yeah, start out with engineers with +5 all, and then eventually you're going to get your battle healer or caretakers, and then you'll switch +5 all to that. And then if you wanted to go superior defense on engineers for a beefy build, for a beefy option. So chest, there's the tree bark jacket, and this is kind of telltale of the rest of the set. It's almost always going to be this sort of ridiculously good BOE item um, that there isn't any close second for, and you're almost required, I'm not gonna say required, but it's pretty much the only option. And I mean, the prices are going up on these. I think they're like 75 gold at this point on my server, but 6 dam, 10 intellect, just huge, and there is no close second. There is a close second for Druid, but only because it's leather, and sometimes you would prefer more armor. But for cloth, this is it. That's really all there is. You just gotta bite the bullet. If you're making a priest, you're gonna be spending a lot of money on these BOE blues. And we suggest greater stats on this. This is gonna be 60 mana, so as opposed to like a major mana enchant, which is 100, you're getting 60. From the 4 int. You're getting the 40 health, you're getting the 4 agility, which is nice, but not all that big. And then the 4 spirit, which is also nice, but not all that big. It just all around fits tree bark, but it's not unique. There is no uniqueness, so you can get as many as you can get 3 of them. You get one with four all to chest, which is like on my rogue, I have 2 blackened defias armors, and I put 100 health on one, and then I also have a greater stats on the other for whenever I want to switch. I want to wear like a stam set, or I want to wear an AP set, or I just want to have you know for like overall a general purpose. Um, and then there's Corsair's Overshirt. You can pick this up from Van Cleef. It drops pretty easily. I think it has a decent drop chance. It's also quite stylish. Um, but yeah, this would be like a spirit set if you wanted to make a spirit set. And this is just one of those bind on pickup items that you would get. Um, you know, and you would end up wearing a spirit set for like in between combat time, and you'll see this whenever we get to weapons, whenever you have these sort of big ticket spirit items, you kind of want to pick them up just for the out of combat time so that you can continue to running and regenning mana, because over the course of a game, uh, 11 spirit, even it might not sound like much, will actually end up being quite a bit of mana over the course of the game if you're constantly swapping to a spirit set. Same with healing as well, but that would be more so for like a warrior or a rogue. Uh, and then we list here the max shadow damage roll chest piece. For the shadow set that we had mentioned. Now we're on to bracers. Mind thrust bracers, another expensive BOE for this slot. 9 intellect, -5 stamina. So this kind of throws people off. They're like, well, that's -5 stamina, and stamina is like the best stat you can have. But this it sort of exemplifies what I said at the very beginning, in that like the more refined you get with playing a 19 priest, the more you'll find yourself sacrificing stamina for intellect. And this is really just exemplifies that idea. Um, yes, it sucks to have -5 stamina on an item, but 9 intellect, oh my god, that is so much, especially when you compare your other options of 2/2 eagle, or a 4 stam. I think you could also get like 4 intellect, I guess. You could get like a 4 intellect if you felt that would be better. But really, 9 int is just so much for the bracer. It really would be hard to pass it up. And we suggest superior spirit, or sorry, stamina for bracer. That's 9 stamina. Just because you're taking that -5, so you'll end up netting 4 on that. And the other enchants that come out later on, which would be the healing power, the 24 healing, or the mana regen, the 4 MP5, I would definitely suggest getting a pair of bracers, such as like a 2/2, or like a 4 stamina, or like the plus healing, where you would put those enchants there. Um, if you really wanted to get crazy, you could do plus healing on a mind thrust. Um, but I would suggest the plus healing to go on a plus healing bracer if you're gonna go that route. Or two. I would say if you're gonna go plus healing to bracer, either it be a +7 or a 2/2 eagle. Now you can also get greater intellect right now off the bat. That's a great option as well. If you really wanted to go super hard into int, you could even do 7 intellect on mind thrust. Have yourself 16 int out of the bracer slot, -5 stam. Um, you know, this all is of course dependent on your play style and how comfortable you are. Like I said, ideally, you could go all the way down to 100 health and still be able to play really well. But in reality, you don't you don't really want to get less than 800. Really 900, honestly. Um, if you're at 1,000, like having 1,000 health and 2,000 mana, that's sort of like the sweet, like that's really a good place to be. Um, because the thing is, it's not just how much health you have. It's also when other people of the opposing faction find out. Like I know this as I main a 19 rogue. I know when I find a priest who just doesn't have enough health to and it doesn't really have the playstyle for the I guess I should say they don't have the playstyle for the amount of health they have. I find that out, I go for that priest all the time because I know I can just clobber them. So you gotta find for your playstyle what that amount of health is. For most people, it's around 1,000 health um, on a priest. And when you start going below 1,000, you need to know your playstyle, and being comfortable with it is really important because you don't just want to go all out and just say, well, I'm gonna be like the best 19 priest player and therefore I'm gonna subscribe to this idea that I put forward where you sacrifice health for more mana because someone like me, like a rogue who finds out that your playstyle and your health doesn't balance out, they're gonna come after you all the time. Um, so do keep that in mind. Oh, and also I guess I should say healing power and mana regen aren't out yet. It's just superior stam, greater intellect. Those are the only two enchants that are out. But I believe these, who knows when Blizzard's gonna roll this stuff out, man. But this should be Argent Dawn rep, I believe. Yeah, Argent Dawn Revered. So whenever that comes out, I would assume it would be the BWL patch, but I'm not entirely sure. So that, not patch, but I guess phase. So whenever BWL comes out, whether that's phase 4, I guess it would be phase 4, which I think people are sort of estimating, oh, January, February of 2020 is when that's going to come out, and whenever that comes out, same with the mana regeneration. Um, I believe. I could be wrong. It could be AQ. Who knows what Blizzard's going to do? But it is worth mentioning. Gloves. Surprise, surprise. Another BOE that has no real item that's close to it. Mage Fist gloves, no uniqueness, 3 stamina, 4 spirit, 5 intellect. Again, I don't. It's just nothing really comes close. I guess the only thing that comes close would be like 4/4 Eagle. So you could go 4/4, but Spirit's no joke. Like, do not underestimate Spirit because when you're out of combat, that the Spirit really adds up in it, and it is gonna result in a lot more mana. And when you're in 19 games, you don't really want to. You want to spend the least amount of time as possible sitting around drinking, not moving. You basically always want to be on the move unless you have. I'm trying to think of a situation where you don't want to be on the move. I mean, unless you're sitting waiting for your teammates to get into a position, like they're lagging behind, they're not keeping pace. I could see that might be a situation where you're not really moving. But other than that, you're pretty much always moving. You always need, the game's always developing, so you're always having to change position, and you don't want to get stuck. Oh, I gotta sit here and drink. Especially if I'm in the game and I find you sitting drinking alone, I've got my assassin blade. I'm gonna pull out and ambush you for the guaranteed crit. And so, so do not underestimate the power of spirit um, on a priest, because it's going to result in a lot of mana over the course of a game. We also got the max healing plus 13 healing to gloves, and then we also have null casting gloves, which drop out of. They are a BOE, but they're so easy to farm. I always tell people don't buy it, just go farm it. It drops out of lock. I believe it's lock. Okay, so it's showing a lot of different stuff here. Is it the wet? Yeah, it's wetlands. No, not the bluegill. Come on, DB. I don't know. Maybe it does drop from all this stuff, but they're so easily farmed. Is it Loch Moden? Is saying it's sold by some horde runner. Is it dropped? No, it's saying it drops off those. Yeah, I'm most certain. Yeah, look, it drops. So I don't know what all these dots are. Usually the classic database is really good. Maybe these do drop, but if you want to go farm them, and they're super easy farm, is is somewhere like, if you can see my mouse here, it's somewhere in this area, like right over here. I think they're like mystics is what they're called. They're the caster types from like right in this area. There's like some caster types. And you'll see that they're like these little like little camps, kind of like along this river right over here, and I believe they're called mystics. And I went out there and I got myself like 3 pairs in less than 20 minutes. It was nothing to get them. Anyway, for the enchants here, healing power is plus 30 healing, I believe, yeah. And this comes out of AQ 40, and I believe it also drops out of AQ 20. Um, yeah, both ruins and temple. So this is for the whenever AQ phase comes in, this is the enchant you wanna be using. Until then, you can either use rugged armor kit or greater agility. This depends again on your playstyle. The agility is if you're going with like this spec right here, actually, where you get into wand. Um, if you do go wand spec, go with the 7 agility enchant. Otherwise, go with the rugged armor because excuse me, because we worked out, and I don't remember the coefficient, but we worked it out um, before, where we wanted to say like what is damage mitigated in terms of armor. And we found that if we assumed of the damage you take in a battleground, let's say 80% would be physical damage, and honestly, that's conservative. Excuse me. That's honestly conservative. I would say, it might even be more than that. But of course, it depends what the what the temperature is, I guess you could say, of what people want to play. But the 40 armor is going to give you more damage reduction, assuming 80% is physical damage taken, than 7 agility would. Um, Unless you're going wand spec, then go 7 agility. Otherwise, go rugged armor kit. That's 40 armor. Then we also show shadow power, which is 20 shadow power. It's also an AQ glove enchant. That would just be for the null casting. But yeah, Keller's girdle. Alright, sorry, we're on to belts. This shadow belt, okay, I only have ever seen 3 of these, and I think it was just a bug on private servers because we only saw 3. Um, I haven't seen one yet. If you do find one and it is in fact in the game, it's crazy rare, and just hang on to it because you can get a lot of gold for it late game when people realize that these things are unbelievably rare. I doubt they're even in the game, but we went ahead and put it there because we have seen it before. And then also we show the max roll on plus healing, but you're pretty much going to go with Keller's Girdle. Crazy stats on this belt. Another crazy BOE. 8 intellect, 3 stamina. Not much else to say about belt. Okay, legs. Same thing, a big BOE, another, there's the max roll, plus 18, and then pious leggings for Alliance. Let's take a look at the Dark Weave real quick just to show. 6 spirit, 7 int, 4 stam. Just sort of like almost like a motif to have this strong intellect, a healthy serving of spirit, and then a decent amount of stamina. So if you were like find a max roll eagle item, it would be a 5/5. And so that would be like the most comparable thing. That would be a 5 intellect, 5 stamina, and you can see just how much better the Dark Weave would be. It's really worth the gold to get that. I wouldn't go 5/5. And then we also show the pious leggings here for Alliance. Now, I haven't played Alliance, so I don't know if these are in-game for Classic or not. But it's quite a quest line. Quite a quest line. Apparently, it starts at level 13. But these would be if you wanted like some really beefy stam spirit legs. And you'd want to pick them up just to have them, just to have, you know, that full sort of toolkit of gear. And then you want to go Libram of Constitution. So, but like I said before, you can mix match Librams and your legs and helm to however you feel is best. So, you know. I would always say like 150 mana on helm and then just 100 health on legs. And then eventually you could get a second pair of Dark Weave breeches and you know get like the other Libram. On to feet. Nat Paglin's Extreme Anglin boots. Same thing as the helm. You get it from the same place, from the same event. It's for the ZG patch. Super crazy good. 12 stam. And there's something I need to say about boots for 19s. And of course, it is subject to Blizzard's clueless whims because it could change, and they've already changed Songflower. Songflower is no longer, you no longer have the ability to get Songflower on a 19. Even on a level 35, you're not able to get it. So I don't even know what level they set like a cap in order to pick up Songflower, which was never a thing. It never has had a cap. This is totally something they've just added for whatever uninformed reason. They went ahead and add like a cap because I guess they were worried levelers were gonna take like Songflower or something. The whole Songflower thing, don't even get me started. That's a whole other video. They're just mishandling things so it's so upsetting. I don't even want to get into it right now. But Nat Paglin's Extreme Anglin, no uniqueness. You can get as many of these as you want. So I guess where I was going with that rant about Songflower and what I wanted to say about boots and why we show this greater stamina enchant here, that 7 stamina to boots, is because when the ZG patch comes out and these become available, you want to have, ideally you'll have 2 pairs of boots, one with minor speed. Well, I mean, obviously you would want the whole setup, but particularly for the Heart of Hakar buff, the Spirit of Zandalar, which gives you 10% movement speed and 15% buff to all your stats. You're gonna want a second pair of boots that have the greater stamina on them. One, to take advantage of the 15% multiplier, and two, because like kind buffs don't stack. So the movement speed bonus that you get from the spirit of the Zandalarian will override minor speed. So there is no point to be wearing minor speed boots when you have this buff. And so you're going to want a second pair of boots with greater stamina for one to take advantage of the multiplier, but also um, because your minor run speed will be overwritten. Like you're not going to have 18% movement speed. You're going to have either the 8% without the buff from minor speed or the 10% from the Spirit of Zandalarian, whatever it is. Um, but right now, the only boots that are out that you would be wanting to wear are the Modest Sanguine Sandals 4/4s. And they look decent, I guess. But not really looking like sandals, I guess. But yeah, pretty much it. These are super cheap though, by the way. Should have no problem getting these. Then we show the max shadow roll. And then Goblin Rocket Boots. You want to be carrying really as many of these on you as you can. These are, these are like the I don't even believe they have a level requirement. Uh, but yeah, significantly increase your run speed for 20 seconds with a chance to break. Um, but this is just, you know, basic stuff. Like this is just in your gear set uh, of items, and ideally you want those enchanted with minor run speed, so that you can just sort of wear them freely. If you're in like a tense game, uh, and especially if you have like world buffs or something, you can throw those on with minor speed and not necessarily have to worry too much. So with rings, basically we're going to start out with there's a seal ring for Alliance and there's a seal ring for Horde. The Alliance seal ring starts pretty early, and so here's its final form, its fully upgraded form: 4 stam, 3 spirit, 3 agi, 3 strength, 4 intellect. Every class on, like, every Alliance 19 is going to get the Seal of Rend, every Horde 19 is going to get the Seal of Sylvanas. So let's look. The Seal of Rend quest starts with a letter. Let's see. It drops off of Van Cleef, the letter itself, and the letter starts this huge quest chain. Jeez, where's it? Oh, here it is, the unsent letter. So the unsent letter drops off of Van Cleef and starts this huge quest chain. It says it starts at requires level 16, so you'll definitely want to start it as soon as you get it because it is, as you can see, a heck of a quest chain. You're definitely going to need help from a higher level to get this thing done. Um, but see, I don't know if it's going to even be in its final form. See, oh shoot, let's go back to that. So you can see here, in its original form, it only has 2 stam and 6 spirit, and I believe it's with either the ZG or the AQ patch where this thing gets upgraded. It might even be later where that gets upgraded to the final form you see here. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been on Alliance yet, but regardless, you still okay. So yeah, it looks like it was 1.9 where it gets upgraded, and it was added in 1.2. So yeah, yeah, 1.9. Okay. So, and then on Horde, you have the Seal of Sylvanas. Super easy. Pick this up at level 18 in the Sepulcher. The quest is called Arugal Must Die, which is the last boss in SFK. You just get in there, you kill him, you loot his head, go and turn it back into the same guy you picked it up from. 8 stam, 3 strength. Obviously, you're not getting it for the strength, but for the stam is a ridiculous amount of stam. Definitely pick that up. Um, and then you also have, so ideally, like, My ideal setup whenever I play Horde Priest is I like wearing the Advisor's Ring, the 5 damage and healing, the 2 MP5. It is huge. This is like one of the only places where you can pick up MP5 and a little 2 stam on that. And I like to wear the lavishly jeweled ring with it, which drops off of Gilland in the Dead Mines, which is 6 intellect, 2 agility. And I wear that with the Advisor's Ring. The Advisor and Lorekeeper, these are honored, I believe, with Warsong Gulch rep. So you'll get those when you get those. But in the meantime, I would wear the Seal of Sylvanas and the lavishly jeweled ring. If you're Alliance, I would wear silver and lavishly jeweled ring until you can get, Lore Keepers. If Seal of Wyrn is not in its final form yet, then I would go with a 3/3 ring. um, just because it's basically where is it? Seal of Wyrn. I mean, 4 stam and 4 int. It's not going to be as good, but it's going to be the next best thing. Another option is the Blood Ring, which is 5 stamina. Uh-oh. There we go. Just 5 stamina, just off the auction house. If you want to pick that up. And we also have the Black Widow band here. Now, isn't always it hasn't always had this -5 stamina, or maybe it has. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet on the server, so I'm not entirely sure if it's -5 stam. But 7 int is huge, and so we do list it there. Ideally, if it does not have the -5 stam, you have that as a 7 int, and also wear the lavishly jeweled. So you're wearing Black Widow band if it doesn't have -5 stam and the lavishly jeweled. If it does have -5 stam, forget about it. Don't even pick it up. Cause well, I mean, I guess you could. It is why we put it here because I would honestly prefer to go with a 3/3 over that, but you know, listed there just because it is relevant to ring slots, and it does have a use as being, a very, very high intellect. Trinkets, Arena Grandmaster, ideally you'll get this before you hit level 19 because it does give XP, and anything that gives XP you want to do prior to hitting level 19. It's a bubble. A dispellable bubble, mind you, but nonetheless a huge 750 to 1250. You're basically going to double your health, assuming nobody knows how to purge or dispel who's around you. So it is like beautiful if you got a rogue on you and you're down like 200 health, and you don't have like a potion, and your psychic scream is on cooldown, and you're not going to get the heal off because there's a rogue on you. And this can just be a lifesaver. Also 1% dodge, not bad, might as well, right? You get this from collecting 12 of the chests out of the Gurubashi arena. Mind you, this gets crazy. On my server, people are bringing entire raids to that thing. So to get it on a level 19 is going to be something else. I know people layer abused at the beginning of the server. Props to them for the big IQ play to lay. I mean, like, they would get this thing done like in one guru or two, because they would just layer hop from layer to layer, looting like the chest on each layer, and they get like 8 to 10 in a single. It goes every 3 hours off of noon server time, and yeah. And then minor recombobulator, always, uh, it says dispels polymorph. No one really uses this unless you don't really need, unless like your priest is polyed and there's nothing else really. Most people will use this as a heal, restores 150 to 250 health and mana. So that's its primary use, is to just, be a recombobulator. But it also has the added effect of removing poly, which the only time you would really ever use that is if your priest gets polyed. But I mean, I guess it really doesn't make sense for a priest to be like, a priest would never use it for that purpose. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. They would simply dispel the poly themselves. But and then the insignia of the Horde and Alliance, no brainer. Okay, now weapons. So let's just cover Gravestone Scepter real quick, just because it's such a big item. I would argue that this is the second most OP item in the bracket, second to Shadowfang. Um, because this is like equivalent to a level 30, level 35 wand in the hands of a 19, and it's huge. It's a 1.5 speed, which is beautiful, but it also has a crazy top end of 57 top end, does 30 DPS. Um, which, like, if you're running Wailing Caverns on your alt or something, you're like a level 22 hunter running Wailing Caverns, you're doing like 30 DPS total already. And so to just put that on a wand is just out of this world. It also is, I believe, the only wand with any sort of stats. So you're getting 1 spirit and 5 shadow resist on it as well. You get this out of Black Fathom Depths from a quest called Black Fathom Villainy, which you pick up at level 18. And Hallelujah, you can actually enter Black Fathom Depths at level 18 on these servers. And you pick up the quest. If you know where, like, the turtle boss, like that first boss is, they're the turtle boss. He's off to, now I don't remember the cardinal directions, but it's off to like the upper right hand corner. There's like a cave and some guy who's like laying face down, as part of Cenarian Circle lore. Um, and you pick it up from him, and then you go kill the last boss, or not the, like, the caster guy. At the end, you kill him, loot his head, and then you take it to wherever the Cenarian. I know for the Cenarian Circle, like, sort of headquarters is in Thunder Bluff for Horde. I'm not really sure where it is for Alliance, but yeah, huge wand. Um, so this is kind of tricky because the play used to be. Well, actually, you know what? Let me just explain the Holy Trinity of staves, because what I was about to explain, which was the daggers and the medicine pouch, came from this Holy Trinity of staves. And the idea is, let's pull them up. Let's pull them, all three of these up. Twisted Chanter, Staff of the Friar, Blessed Seer. And I know a lot of people, like, I've had people ask me, like, oh, well, like, do I go Twisted Chanters? Do I go Blessed Seer? And some of the higher IQ people, oh, is Staff of the Friar? That seems kind of good. You get all of them, essentially. And this is what makes a 19 priest so expensive. Because ideally, what you're doing is you've got all three staves, and this kind of exemplifies, like, having all the different tools in the toolbox, if you will, because you get your Staff of Friar and you put plus 20 spirit enchant on it. You get the Twisted Chanter Staff and you enchant it with plus 22 intellect, and you get the Staff of the Blessed Seer, which you enchant with plus 55 healing. Currently, 55 healing is the only enchant that's out right now of those three. But you could do the same thing, like, it still maintains, even if you do it with, like, plus 9 int, which is the max two-handed int enchant, and plus 9 spirit, which is the max spirit enchant for two-hander, right now. And the theory goes is that, let me get the calculator out. If you had this staff, Twisted Channers, which is 10 intellect plus the 22 times 1.5 times 10 is 480. So you would take, say you're at 2000 mana minus 480. You would cast spells until you got to 1520. Once your mana hits 1520, the staff really doesn't have any use anymore, and you swap to your Blessed Seer. And now you're at 100% mana, and you've got your plus 55 healing at 1520 mana from our 2k example. And you would use this to, basically cast your healing spells and just whatever. And then really just your healing spells. And then whenever you're not casting a healing spell, you throw on your Staff of Friar, which has all this huge spirit on it to regen mana. So if you're like dispel spamming, throw on the Staff of Friar, because you're not going to get any benefit really out of healing for dispel spamming. But for when you drop combat, you start regening mana. It really doesn't matter, I guess, if you're dispel spamming, whether you're using Blessed Seer or Staff of the Friar. It's not going to really make a difference. I guess the Force Stam is really the only consideration if you're doing that, and the little bit of intellect maybe, but really won't make much of a difference there. So yeah, you throw on your Staff of the Blessed Seer whenever you're casting healing spells, and then whenever you're not casting a healing spell, you swap back to the Staff of the Friar, and you hang on to your Staff of the Friar until you get back to your 1520 mana. You're at like 100. Then you put on your Twisted Chanter and start regening from your 1520 back up to 2k in our sort of hypothetical example. That is the holy trinity of stabs, sort of short and sweet. And so we extended that idea into daggers because we realized that the Furbog medicine pouch is actually much more advantageous. It's 10 stamina on it. The on use, yet another thing Blizzard is just, really pisses me off. So they put a level cap on this. Not a level cap, a level, what would that be, a floor? Or a ceiling? I don't know. Anyway, it requires level 50 or something to use this, which is just so brain dead, so clueless. Like I hate Blizzard so much. Free Hong Kong, by the way, I guess, might as well. Um, oh man, really makes me mad. Like, why would you do that? Why would you put that? Like, why would you? Anyway, still 10 stamina, and you would use this 10 stam with like the Evocator's Blade. And so let's just kind of sort of drop Furbog. So imagine now that you would basically the same theory as the what we call it, the Holy Trinity, right, of staves. The same thing would hold for, imagine if you're using the Furbog pouch. Now you're using, instead of Twisted Channers, almost. Instead of using a Twisted Channers, you're now using Evocator's Blade with plus 22 intellect enchant on it. And instead of Staff of the Blessed Seer, you're using Hook Dagger of plus 9 healing. Now, what's thrown a wrench into this, and you, by the way, you would still use Staff of the Friar because there's no one-hander with a ridiculous amount of spirit, although you could still have 20 spirit on a one-hander and it be, you could still technically do that. What's thrown a wrench in this is the fact that, number one, they've gone and screwed with the max roll on plus healing to dagger, and also the fact that the Furbog medicine pouch has that on use taken away from it for twinks, like for everyone, for 19s, 29s, and 39s. So I feel like it might go like really it's gonna go back to the Holy Trinity of staves. Um, Now, and the play isn't going to be the one-hander Furbog. Of course, it'll still be like a good play to go like Evocator's Furbog, just because, I mean, if we compare it, Evocators is 4 intellect, so you're getting 10 stamina, 4 intellect, versus what you would have, um, 10 int, 6 stam, so you'd be picking up, you would be picking up 4 stam and sacrificing 6 int in order to do that. However, there is still an added bonus to the one-hander offhand, and that is the other offhand swaps as well. So like the plus healing. So you could do like the 9 healing and then the swap to the plus healing offhand as well. Um, and there's also fun sort of offhands like the Everglow Lantern, which is just great. I love that item. Um, Totem of Affliction for Alliance. Um, and now the Totem of Affliction is kind of interesting because that just seems so like with the Shadow Assist Priest thing that we were talking about. That just seems like such a cool thing, but I highly doubt that it's really even viable. And then the torches. But yeah, and then we also show the witching stave. I'm sure you've seen this one on the auction house as well, just for like the shadow. But basically, the idea like of the Holy Trinity was also with dagger and the furbog. But since they've gone and screwed with the max rolls and they've gone and screwed with the on use, they've taken it away. I don't really think that's gonna be the play anymore. I think the play is gonna go back to the way it was with the Holy Trinity. And then we also show the revered Warsong reward. And this would end up, and you could play around with whatever enchant you'd want to put on that. But the big thing you're getting there is that 3 MP5, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, it's like the only place where you either that and the ring, and then the bracer enchant are the only places where you can pick up any MP5. So this would be your dispelling staff, and I would say you would want to intellect or sorry the spirit enchant on it. This would be your dispel staff, and you would honestly you would end up using let's get out of all that business, and then you would no longer be a holy trinity, but the four horsemen of staves, if you will. You would have this with the spirit on it for your dispel. Or maybe int, I guess. Either one doesn't really matter. But because the big thing you're picking up is 3 MP5. I would say Spirit just for like the out of combat time. Um, and I bet you that 3 MP5 would end up being worth more than the. I mean, the 11 Spirit's really strong still. Because you would still have your Staff of the Friar before you got that anyhow, because that's revered. And then the logic would go the same. You would start out with that Twisted Channers, work through the extra mana that you get from that, and then swap to Gnarled for your Dispel spam, and then swap to Blessed Seer for healing. You would be swapping, between these two. And then whenever you get low on mana, throw on the Staff of the Friar, or whenever you're out of combat, throw that on to regen. So I think that's going to be the way it goes. Anyway, this has gone a little bit longer than I wanted to, but covered quite a bit. I'm just going to do another video on the races and the racials and the specs. That one shouldn't be too long. But yeah, thanks for checking it out. I'll see you in the next